All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Live from Redhook here at the Function House. And tonight we'd like to welcome a very special guest to the show, Mr. Brutal Bill.
Thank you, Mike. What's going on, man?
Welcome to the show,
What's up,
buddy.
man?
How's everything, man?
You are a veteran in this business.
Make sure you're talking to the mic. We
Yeah,
want to
I've
hear
been
everything
doing
you got to
this-
say.
Doing this a long time. I'm a relic, but we're still doing it. We're still hanging in there and trying to do what we can.
When you first started, you were a hip hop DJ.
No, not necessarily. I was actually a house DJ.
Okay.
And then we linked up with the hip hop guys from Staten Island. They used to come to the studio, me and Anthony's studio. So we kind of just, did house and hip hop at the same time. Then went back to, when we started working in the city clubs.
You got to talk into
Oh,
the
sorry,
mic.
man.
No, we want everyone to hear what you got to say.
When we were doing the city clubs, we weren't doing hip hop that much.
Okay.
So it was just in that little area at the time that we did hip hop. I did hip hop. And then hip hop came back into our lives later on when we had, Anthony Acid, who's a longtime partner of mine for many years. He had Ghostface coming into his studio. I had Raekwon coming into my studio. So
So you had members of the Wu-Tang Clan coming into you
we
guys.
had members of the Wu-Tang Clan coming in, and we kind of just went, back and forth doing that.
So let's take a step back. So you're born and raised in Staten Island?
No, I'm born and raised. I actually lived in pretty much every borough in New York City: Staten Island, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Bronx, and Queens. But primarily the Bronx and Queens.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And when did you transition out to Staten Island?
We came out here in '79.
Okay. All right.
So a good portion of my life has been, in Staten Island.
Right. Mm-hmm. And how did you gravitate into getting to be wanting to be a DJ, production? Like, how did that whole process start for you?
Production came a little later on.
Okay.
DJing was probably like a lot of kids who saw the movie Beat Street. Once I saw that, I had to go get turntables. That was pretty much it.
That was a huge inspiration to a lot of people.
Huge inspiration to a lot of people.
Yep.
And funny enough, that hip hop was an influence back then too. Because everyone was trying to learn how to cut and scratch.
Yep.
But yeah, those real early years, I'm talking 13, 14, maybe even 12, when the movie came out, that's when we decided we all wanted to be DJs. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I could watch anytime that movie's on. I could watch it.
It takes me right back to,
Yep.
to those days, being in the room, not, just learning how to DJ, being off beat and trying to figure out your craft.
Yep.
But yeah, that was a huge inspiration for me.
So, who were what the DJs that when you were coming up? Who were the DJs you looked up to?
Oddly enough, some of the DJs we looked up to were guys from the neighborhood who were older than us. One of my mentors, John Chan, and DJ Junior. I mean, these guys were doing the stuff that we wanted to do. They were doing it already. Working with freestyle artists, having studios, drum machines. I mean, when we saw that at that age, we were just blown away. We saw lights and buttons, and we heard beats coming out of machines, and we were like, whoa. So, we were already DJing, but when we saw that was like the next level.
So, back then, there wasn't really like a famous DJ. Like, who were the famous DJs back then?
It would honestly probably like Jelly Bean Benitez.
Yep.
Larry
New York guy,
Levan, of
yeah.
course. You got those guys who were legendary status, and the parties they did were unique.
And then later on, it was guys like Louis Vega and Dave
Well,
Morales
you know
and
what?
those.
Oddly enough, Louis Vega's got to go into that discussion also, and those guys from that era. Because if you think of Louis Vega, you go back to the Cover Girls and songs like that. So even though it was freestyle, it was the good freestyle.
Yeah.
I remember I used to see Louis Vega at 1018 and just watch his set and watch what he was doing and how he transitioned from one song to the next.
And he was also playing on like the MTV, like when they had their like dance party show. I think he used to play a couple of times on that show as well.
I mean, some of those guys.
It wasn't
from
the
back
grind
then,
yet, but it was whatever they had pre the grind.
Mm-hmm.
They had. I know he used to DJ at times on there. Yeah.
So yeah, if anything, he would be in that discussion. But yeah, like I said, we had a lot of guys who were from the neighborhood who were older, who we looked up to. But then once we started getting into clubs and making our names for ourselves, Then we started traveling more to the city and seeing, David Morales and those kind of guys.
So what clubs were you going to in Manhattan?
Well, the ones that we were going to with the fake IDs were, 1018, old enough to even say the Underground. I think that was Union Square.
Yep.
But before that, we actually, me, Anthony Acid, and we call him my cousin, Mike Caruso, Lord Michael. He got us into a club called Wave Street and the Red Spot, which was the first culture clash in Staten Island of, techno when it first came in. And those clubs along Staten Island on Bay Street were very, freestyle and lighthouse and stuff like that. But once techno came in, it was a whole nother game. So guys like me and Anthony Acid, we did the Red Spot with Lord Michael, successful party completely, and we springboarded that right to the limelight. So that's where we can go into right now.
Let's get into the limelight.
Yeah. So talk to us. You worked for Petergation.
So
Well, one of the greatest clubs of all time. I would put that on my list.
for sure, all his clubs
Yeah.
were to me legendary status in their own right. So yeah, Lord Michael brought me and Anthony Acid along, and we just started playing at Limelight, or then we would take a cab later on and go to Palladium on the same night. We'd have different gigs at different clubs, but in the same night.
Yep.
And we were with him for many years. It was, as you know, the craziest experience in New York history was any one of Petergation's
Yeah.
clubs.
Well, he ran nightlife for, I would say, like a good 7 to 8 years in Manhattan.
Oh gosh, it was probably a little bit more. I think it was that long when we experienced it from the techno side. But Limelight on the Petergation was there from the
Yeah.
right. But once he connected with Lord Michael, that was history. That was literally where New York nightlife started. So all you people know, that's where it started.
Well, it was a legendary time. I mean, I think like there was always different times in Manhattan for different venues, right? You had the Studio 54 era, you had the Funk House era,
Sure.
you had the Emerald City era, you had the Limelight era, the Palladium era. So,
Absolutely.
and his clubs had a lot of good eras. The Tunnel had great DJs holding residencies there, like Junior Vasquez and Danny Tenaglia.
For sure.
So yeah, he
And
was.
also remember, he used to also do Mecca on Sundays.
Yes.
Which
That
was
party was crazy.
the craziest hip hop party,
Yeah.
probably ever in New York City.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show, he was really. We all experienced that life. We all went to his clubs. We were all there till 6, 7, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, walking out while people were going to work. And you won't see that again. That's over.
So what about production? When you first started producing, what music were you producing?
Freestyle. And actually, I was with my mentor I mentioned before, John Chan. We would fiddle around with some Roland drum machines, which are classics now, the 808, the 909, the 727. And he was actually producing songs for my sister. And I was still the young buck. So I was just learning and, trying to get into the production. But where production really got more serious was when I bumped into Anthony Acid.
So how did that whole thing come?
So, I've known Anthony. Me and Anthony used to up rock at Safari South. We used to battle in the circle.
Oh, really?
Not necessarily me and him, but we would be in the same kick the
dances?
whole nine. There's no video for that, thank God.
You're lucky.
I would love to
if
see
it-
him
Oh
windmill.
my
Well,
God.
he'll probably do it for you if it was just us in the room, but other than that,
Kick dancing had to be the funniest dancing.
yes.
It was funny.
And then what was funny about the kick dancing was the aggression you'd put on your face when you're battling someone. Like this is real serious, Like I need to beat you and defeat you.
Crazy. Right?
Yeah, so I knew him from the clubs, and I heard whispers that he was working on, producing music. So
Around what year was this?
this was 1988, I'm going to say.
Okay.
Okay. So I heard he was linking up actually with Frankie Bones and Lenny D. So he was doing stuff with them. And then he did 2 records on Frankie Bones' label. I think the first one was called Rockin' Boogie Down, and then the one which was a hit, which was Just As Long As I Have You. So he had those records out. He's getting his buzz. He's doing his thing. And I don't remember exactly where we brought up the conversation of production, but I had told him that I was working a little bit on music with my mentor, I said before. You know, he was working with my sister, so I would look at how he would, you know, use the gear, et cetera.
Sure.
So I may have amped it up a little and said, yeah, I'm producing the records. I got songs, you know, but it wasn't really that far yet. So he comes by one day, and he sees a reel-to-reel that I had in my studio. But I wasn't producing records yet, but I was doing edits, like the Tony Moran edits and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So he goes, I didn't know you do that. He goes, you know, I could use some edits. So that's how me and him linked up and finally started doing some work. And then really a short time after that, we started looking at studios, and we just pooled our money together, went into studios, and, you know, we started, you know, he would do a kick, I would do a bass line, he would do a hi-hat, I would do a clap. But keep in mind, back then there were no computers.
So you guys were spending hours together.
Days. We were every day in the studio. You know, we found a cool place that wasn't too much. It was called Natural Sound Studios, but we used to call it Natural Hum Studios because it always had some type of noise in there. You know, so you know, but still, we made do. We were just grateful to be in the studio, and we were doing what we wanted to do.
And it was
Anthony could find the hum anywhere.
Yeah.
You know him, Mr. Frequency. He's like Mr. Spock.
Yeah,
if the frequency's wrong, he's gonna pick it up. with his
he
ears.
heard a couple of the wrong frequencies here when he was playing.
Yeah,
He
I know.
like,
I was telling you before. He told me, he goes, yeah, listen, when you do the function house, I don't know, man, the frequency's a little funny. It might be off.
we got to fix that.
But going back to how we were doing music, I really want to touch on this because the kids, I'm going to look into the camera, going to say, and you kids are lucky today. You got computers, you got Apple loops, you got all types of stuff. Me and Anthony, this is how we did it. Are you ready?
Yeah. How'd you do it?
We had a tape machine, 16 tracks, Tascam. So we had a sampler where we could put one sample in there, just one. So we would have to hold that pitch from the sampler on beat for the length of the song. And if you messed up, you had to start all over.
How many times did that happen?
We had to do that for the whole song. So if the song had 18 tracks, we had to do 6 minutes times 18 tracks, and you got it on beat the whole time. So it was really a labor of love, and we did it, and we laugh about it now like it was hard, but we loved every minute of it.
Yeah, but that's, you know, look, that's all you guys knew, right? You didn't know, like, there wasn't any of that technology that's there today.
That's why some of those records are 12 minutes long, 13 minutes long.
Listen, it's funny you mentioned that because I was just talking to this with some kid who came in the studio the other day, and he had a techno track, and it was like 4 minutes and 40 seconds. I'm like, is this the radio mix? I'm like, I mean, because we used to do songs that were, you know, like I did a remix for Joy Cardwell that was like 13 minutes long.
Yeah.
And that's how we all did it back then. It was more of a journey. You know, we had the breakdown, the intro.
Yep.
You know,
And there was a huge break in the middle of the record.
tremendous.
It was a huge, like 3 minutes it could have been.
And if you did it the right way, it could have been 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And they would have loved it.
It's crazy.
So you have a ton of tracks out.
Yeah, I've, you know, between me and the guys.
Let's
from
talk
back
about
then,
the old stuff that you put out.
I know, like, there's like,
I mean, you have, couple of my more popular ones was Survive and Destiny.
Yep.
I mean, those, you know, have tested the you know, time. They've been, even now when you play them, the reaction is phenomenal.
And what labels were those on?
It's funny because Destiny could have had a whole nother history. I gave that to a label called Progressive High.
I remember that record. It was like a great label, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
And oddly enough, I gave that to Junior Vasquez on a DAT, at the bottom of the DAT. I didn't even want to give it to him. I didn't think it was like good. The DAT that I gave him was a remix that me, Jonathan Peters, and Anthony Acid did, which was Feel What You Want to Feel, Christine W. So
Great record.
It was we had a great time doing that. We did that in one of Anthony Acid's studio on Broad Street in Staten Island, and I remember it was a one-night deal. We went there about 10 o'clock at night. We all left at 6, and we were finished. But yeah, what was cool about those times were, again, you working with technology that is not like today. So it's kind of like more, again, a labor of love. When you do it, you love it more than I feel that you would now when it's it's such instant gratification these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, those records, those two records that you made, those were some really big. Those were big records here in New York, man.
They were big records here, and I got a lot of licensing deals overseas on those. And that was the first record that really told me, you know what, I think I could do this, and I want to do this.
Yep.
And for the next following years, all of us, all this, Plasmic Honey, Mike Macaluso, obviously Richie Santana, and Peter Bailey. These are the guys that used to come to us for advice and stuff, and we saw them just take off on their own right.
Yeah.
And doing amazing things. So we really had something kind of special in Staten Island going for a while.
Yeah, I think what we should say to everybody that's watching, I mean, like the last, say, month and a half has been dedicated to like a lot of Staten Island guys, right? We've had a lot of Staten Island guys, and Staten Island has played a big part in music history in New York. We've had a lot of
Great
guys
come
come out of Staten Island that have really made huge impacts in music.
I believe that, and I also think that the recognition isn't there. Not that it's needed, but I think some guys from the island are more, were way more talented than they were given credit for. It is what it is, but we were lucky to have a nice crew of guys in Staten Island. All good guys, too.
Yeah.
All really good guys. And, during that era of 90, a little earlier for me and Anthony because we're older, but 95 to, early 2000s was, magical. It was great.
Yeah.
No,
it
great
really
music.
was.
Mm-hmm.
So Sector Recordings.
Right. So Sector came about. I think Sector came about first because I wanted to start releasing stuff again, and I was tired of the, political, how we can get with with labels and stuff. As it turned out, I only wound up releasing I think one track, and instead I found myself loving signing records, listening to the music and A&R it from other people. We've had guys, really good producers on the label so far. Robert Jr., Tony DeAngelis. Anthony's had some stuff on there. Tommy Mist, who's going to be on the show next week also. Mike Macaluso also did a remix for us. These guys make quality productions, They're not throwing, when you hear stuff on Vport, you hear quality sometimes that's, wow, how can you release that? These are good guys who need it to get some exposure. Whether minimal from a startup or from a major label, they needed to get some stuff out there.
Sure.
So, happily, I signed all their records, and we've had a great response from all organic too. We haven't done anything where we're paying for promotion or anything like that. Although, we might, everyone has to do that.
Of course,
point.
yeah.
But we've been lucky to just throw the stuff out there, see if it sticks to the wall. And a lot of it has, But again, these guys, there's something about this particular crew that they're invested in their work. You know what? It sounds good, but let me do another pass on it. And that's somebody who really is, wants their craft to sound just right.
Sure, sure. And is there a particular sound that you guys are looking for tracks, or are you just trying to?
No, we're not doing that. I kind of took a little bit from my career as far as how I wanted Sector Recordings to go, and that is I produced everything. If anybody knows my history, I produced everything from deep house to disco house to tech to techno, and even hip hop with the Wu-Tang. So I know some people say that you got to stick to a genre for a label, and maybe that works with certain labels, but for me, I just felt that good music is good music. So we gave it a shot. We gave it a go with no sector deep, sector tech, sector techno. It's just Sector Records. That's it. And so far, we've been doing good.
I'm curious, are you behind any Wu-Tang records that you want to mention?
Well, there's some stuff that's in the works right now, both with me and Anthony, that we probably can't divulge right now, but I could speak to 2003, the Lex Diamond story. I have a track on there that I produced for Raekwon. And we were in the studio for that. I hung out with him for the majority of that album. Just hanging out, trying to feed him tracks and stuff. I would give him probably a CD with 10 or 15 beats every couple of days. And some I would give it to him again, just in case maybe he didn't like it first
sometimes they're in a different vibe.
Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
So, so one day he just said, that's the one, that's hot right there. So, he took it. His management called me up. It was an easy peasy deal. So
Just like that.
Just like that. So it's on there, and oddly enough, now I'm working with his niece. Her name is Nye Brim, and she's just a really good young MC, and you're going to be hearing more about her.
So you're all over the place, man.
I'm trying right now. This is it's for some reason I'm having more fun now doing it than I did before.
Well, yeah, your experience, you have all this wisdom.
I think that's what
Right?
it is. Once you get older,
It's like you
lean back and calm down a little
And
more.
it's just like, it's so funny. Like, you talk to some of these young kids, and even if you try to explain things to them, it's just anybody, not even in just music. It's just, you don't know until you experience something.
Sure.
There's only so much you want to try to mentor and help people, and that's what we like to do with the show. But you got to go through the motions.
No question about it.
And then
People got to, especially men, we have to learn the hard way.
yeah.
No, that's true. But the way we learned it and we did it, I feel was more making your bones, as opposed to how it is today.
Yeah, it's very easy today.
There's a lot of, here, take this. You didn't earn this, but we're going to do this anyway. I don't try to knock on that too much, but I feel that somebody who's earned their way should not have to compete with someone who just got on the block. I think everyone should learn their craft a little bit and respect it instead of it just being given to you and you walk around like you're the best DJ in the world when you've been doing this for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think a lot of history for the older guys is lost. But we're still here and trying to knock the doors down and let them know, hey,
No, but that's why we have this show, because we want people to tell their story. Because
100%.
a lot of people that we have on the show have been integral parts of music.
No question.
And I think that people should know.
Right, no question about it.
Young people watching the show tonight, you should go and check out Survive and Destiny, because those are two great tracks.
Right. And one thing for the young kids, make your own music. Make your own music.
So that's another question I was going to ask you about ghost production.
Right.
Have you ever done any ghost producing?
Man, I got to tell you, that is a double-edged sword. As far, I mean, I've seen it just stab you 10 times over. It's in its infancy now, and what I mean by that is, as far as the people I know, they're just starting to touch base with whether they want to do that, myself included. And
Well, is there big money behind it?
it depends on who you're working with, but for the most part, you got some really good guys out there with ideas that don't exactly know how to get it out, and those are the kind of guys you kind of it's okay to nurture them and help them because they have an idea. But then there's other guys who just don't want to do anything. They just want a record tomorrow so they could walk around and say, I have a record, So it's really that deep these days, So I think when guys like us are finally, in the ground, how it's going to be, how it is now is probably the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of kids tell me today, oh, that's where it's going right now. It's going towards the way of ghost production. And I'm like, but don't you want to produce it yourself? Don't you want to, be like part of your soul was that made that song? So it's a double-edged sword, It depends on how you look at it. I mean, I'm not to knock anyone who wants to make money. Everyone has a right to earn money. If that's how they make their money, that's fine. I have no beef with that. But I think the art might suffer a little bit from it.
Yeah. And I could see it in the long run creating a lot of drama,
No
because you might have a guy who's a dope producer, and he just starts banging out tracks, and he's giving tracks out to everybody, and nobody knows that it's him. And then one day he
might just be fed up with it,
and he just comes out, and he's just like, I made all those tracks, and
Right.
I could see something like that happening.
You know what the thing with that is? I would argue that if you made a deal, and the deal was that you got paid for it, and the deal was we're not telling no one, deal is a deal is a deal, But yeah, you could have a guy who could just go off the reservation one day and say, I don't care what you gave me, those are my tracks, Or maybe if a ghost producer produces something that sells 1 million copies, he might be really pissed off, and be like, well, heck, forget the agreement that we had. This is $1 million right now, 1 million sales. So, yeah, it's to me, it's still, wait to be determined. We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what type of music are you going to play for us?
So, a lot of people were asking me that tonight, and boy, I was mulling it over because most of my friends are like, well, they're going to want to hear what you did back then, but I want to, also know that I'm current right now,
Yeah,
too.
of course.
So we're going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to play some current tech and some techno, and then we'll see if we can move it over to some of the older stuff from the old Arena and Palladium days.
Awesome.
Bill, it's a pleasure to have you here, man.
too.
Thanks for
Yeah,
coming
man.
down.
Thank you for
We're
coming
gonna
on the
take a 2-minute
show.
break. We'll get Brutal Bill up on the set. Peace.
Peace.